Imagine a massive world power, highly trained, heavily armed, and totally expecting a fight.
Right.
Now imagine that entire nation just collapsing completely in only 6 weeks.
That's the story of France in the spring of 1940. It's one of the most stunningly rapid military victories in modern history.
It seems impossible. France and Britain, they'd been preparing for this war for years. They had more soldiers, bigger economies, and in a lot of ways, even better tanks.
They did. So the real mystery we have to solve here is this. How did the German army pull off such a swift and total victory? How did a war everyone expected to last for years turn into a lightning-fast campaign?
And that's our mission today. We're going to get into the strategies, the terrible French miscalculations, and the technology that made it all happen.
It's a huge lesson in why speed and new ideas can just completely demolish a static, old-fashioned defense.
So to get this, we have to start with the German plan for victory, this new strategy they had called Blitzkrieg.
Blitzkrieg, yeah. It literally translates to lightning war.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just a name. It was a whole philosophy built around speed and surprise.
And the main goal was to avoid what happened in World War I.
Exactly. They wanted to avoid that horrific trench warfare at all costs, where millions died and the front lines barely moved for 4 years. Blitzkrieg was about movement. It was about paralyzing the enemy, not just grinding them down.
How did they actually do that on the ground?
It was all about teamwork, what we call combined arms. Think of it like a nervous system. You had the tanks on the ground, the Air Force, the Luftwaffe in the sky, and the infantry following up, all working together instantly.
Okay, so it's not just about having tanks, it's how you use them.
Precisely. The old way was to spread your army out along a long line. The German approach was concentration. They'd bunch up a massive fist of tanks, a panzer group, and smash it into one single narrow point in the enemy line.
So instead of a long wall pushing forward, it's more like a spear point.
A spear point. That's a perfect way to put it. The idea was to punch through so hard and so fast you create this huge gap. And once they were through, commanders like Heinz Guderian, they didn't stop. They raced deep into enemy territory.
So they're not fighting every little battle. They're just driving.
They're driving, cutting communication lines, creating total chaos behind the main enemy armies. It's all built on this idea of a mission command.
What's that?
It means local commanders on the ground didn't have to wait for orders from way back at headquarters. They were given a goal, and it was up to them to figure out how to achieve it on the spot. If they saw an opening, they took it instantly.
That kind of flexible thinking is, well, it's the total opposite of the French approach, isn't it?
Oh, completely. The French military was very centralized, very slow to react, and this takes us right to the failure of their main defense plan.
Imagine outline. I mean, you hear about it, but this thing was just monumental.
It was basically an underground city built for war. A whole line of connected forts along the German border. It had huge gun turrets that could pop up out of the ground, its own underground railways, hospitals, everything.
The French leadership was completely obsessed with fighting the last war, World War I. They thought this line was just impossible to attack directly.
And they poured their entire defense budget into it. But here's the fatal flaw, and it seems so obvious now.
It didn't go all the way to the sea.
It didn't. And crucially, it stopped where the terrain got difficult. At the Ardennes forest.
Which is this dense, hilly forest between Belgium and France.
Right. The French High Command considered the Ardennes a natural tank stopper. They thought the thick woods, the steep hills, the lack of roads, that it would just bog down any big armored army. So they left it barely defended. They felt safe.
And that was the opening.
That was the whole game. The German army knew exactly how the French saw the Ardennes. So for months, they practiced moving vehicles through that exact kind of terrain, finding paths the French had just ignored.
So they were basically rehearsing the attack.
Meticulously. General Guderian had to convince his superiors they could push thousands of vehicles, tanks, fuel trucks, everything, through that forest in one single hidden wave.
And that's what they did. In May 1940, the main German attack came right through those woods, mostly at night.
It completely surprised the French where they felt most secure. By going through the Ardennes, they just drove around the Maginot Line,
making France's strongest, most expensive defense completely useless overnight.
It's the classic example of finding your opponent's blind spot. But, it wasn't just about geography. Blitzkrieg needed technology to work, it needed air power, and maybe most importantly, communication.
Okay, let's talk about the Air Force, the Luftwaffe.
From day one, they established what's called air superiority. They didn't just win dogfights, they bombed French airfields and destroyed hundreds of French planes while they were still on the ground.
So the German tanks could move without worrying about being bombed from above.
Exactly. The Luftwaffe was basically their flying artillery. And they used this one very specific psychological weapon, the Stuka dive bomber.
Ah, the scoofs of the
The
siren.
Jericho trumpet, they attached them to the landing gear.
Yeah.
So when the plane went into a steep dive, it made this terrifying screaming sound.
The goal wasn't just to hit the target, was it?
No, the goal was to shatter the nerves of the soldiers on the ground, to make them run away before the bomb even hit.
Yeah.
It was engineered terror.
On top of that, the Luftwaffe was also hitting targets behind the lines, right?
Oh, yeah. This was brilliant. They specifically bombed radio stations and telephone lines. This cut off the French troops from their high command.
So if you're a French soldier, you're being terrorized from the air, you see tanks you can't stop, and you're getting no new orders, you're completely isolated.
And that confusion was made so much worse by the technology gap on the ground. And this might be the biggest single factor. Radios.
Radios in the tanks.
Yes, every single German tank had a two-way radio. Tank commanders could talk to each other, coordinate their movements instantly.
And they could talk to the planes, too.
They could talk directly to the pilots. Call in an airstrike on a machine gun nest that was holding them up. This meant they could react to problems in seconds.
So what did the French have?
Many of their tanks, even their bigger, better ones, had no radios.
No radios. How did they communicate?
Flags, hand signals. Sometimes a guy would have to get out and run from one tank to another in the middle of a battle.
You're trying to coordinate a defense against an enemy moving at 40 miles an hour, and you're waving a flag.
It's impossible. That constant flow of information gave the Germans a massive lead. And all of this, the air power, the radios, the strategy, it all comes together at one critical spot. Sedan.
Sedan was the key. It's where the Germans had to cross the Big Meuse River to get into the heart of France.
The French expected any crossing attempt there to take days, maybe even weeks of heavy fighting.
But it didn't.
Not at all. German engineers, under fire, used rubber boats and smoke screens and put together portable bridges with incredible speed. They were across the river in hours.
And that created the gap.
The campaign-deciding gap. Once they were across, the Blitzkrieg started its most famous and terrifying move, the race to the English Channel.
This is where they just drove for the coast as fast as they could.
It was a huge gamble. They were driving hundreds of miles ahead of their main supply lines, ignoring smaller pockets of resistance.
Yeah.
A really cautious commander would never do it.
But it worked. They reached the sea and cut the Allied army in two.
Right. They trapped all the best British and French units up in the north, with the German army on one side and the ocean on the other, completely cut off.
And that leads us to Dunkirk.
The miracle of Dunkirk. The trapped soldiers all fell back to this one small port, Dunkirk. It was their only way out.
And the British government put out this call for help, for any boat that could float.
And that's where you get the story of the little ships. Hundreds of fishing boats, private yachts, ferries. They sailed across the channel, dodging bombs, to rescue the men off the beaches.
It was chaotic, but they saved over 330,000 soldiers.
They did. But they had to leave everything else behind. Every tank, every truck, every big gun was just left on the beaches of France. They saved the army, but they lost the battle for France.
And with those northern armies gone, there was nothing stopping the Germans from heading south to Paris.
Right. The French government knew it couldn't stop them. And to save the historic city from being destroyed in a battle, they declared Paris an open city.
Meaning they wouldn't fight for it.
Correct. So in June 1940, German soldiers just marched into Paris. It was a massive psychological blow to the whole world.
And then came the official surrender, the armistice.
And for the final humiliation, the German leader insisted it be signed in the exact same railway car where Germany had surrendered at the end of World War I.
It was pure revenge.
Purely. And the terms were harsh. Germany would occupy the northern and western parts of France. The French army was disarmed, and France had to pay a huge amount of money every single day to cover the costs of being occupied.
What was life like then in occupied France?
It changed overnight. German soldiers were everywhere. There were strict curfews. And food. Food became incredibly scarce. A lot of the harvest was just shipped straight to Germany.
So you needed special coupons or stamps just to buy bread.
Exactly. And the occupiers controlled all the news, all the radio. Any kind of protest or resistance meant immediate arrest. Freedom, as they knew it, just vanished.
It was a time of fear and real hardship.
A terrible time, forcing people to make impossible choices between collaborating, just surviving, or risking everything to resist.
So if we pull all of this together, what's the big lesson from the 1940 campaign?
The painful lesson is that you have to keep up with technology. The Germans proved that fast, mobile warfare built around communication was just way better than the old static defense of the Maginot Line. It was a victory of imagination as much as weapons.
It seems like the French were always preparing to fight the last war perfectly.
And that's always fatal. They clung to outdated ideas, and history literally just drove right around them.
But the escape at Dunkirk meant the war wasn't over.
No, not at all. And that knowledge, saved along with the soldiers on those beaches, became the foundation for how the Allies would eventually fight back.
You know, the real mystery left over isn't how the Germans won so fast. It's why the French, seeing how thin and stretched out those German supply lines were, never managed to launch a counterattack to cut them. Something to think about.
Good luck with your studies.